The great hall of the Crimson Scale clan fell silent as Yuna walked forward. Her red scales, once bright and proud, now seemed dull in the harsh light. Behind her, 3 small hatchlings huddled together. The youngest, Wu-Jin, barely reached her knee. His tiny wings trembled as hundreds of dragon eyes stared at them. Elder Patriarch Kyung-ho sat on his stone throne. His ancient scales were black as night, scarred from countless battles. When he spoke, his voice echoed through the hall like thunder. "Yuna of the Crimson Scale," he began, "you have broken our most sacred law. You have brought young into this world before your 1000th year. You are but 700 years old. A child yourself." Yuna kept her head high. "My hatchlings are healthy and strong. They deserve to live. They deserve to live according to our ways," Kyung-ho replied. "But you have denied them this right. You have shamed your entire clan." Around the hall, other dragons whispered and hissed. Some looked at Yuna with disgust. Others turned away, unable to meet her eyes. Her own clan members, dragons she had grown up with, now treated her like a stranger. "Where is their father?" asked Elder Miran, her voice cold as winter wind. Yuna looked toward the crowd. There, among the other young dragons, stood Taemin. His golden scales shimmered as he avoided her gaze. They had been promised to each other since childhood. They had planned to wait until they were both old enough. But love had found them early, and now he would not even look at her. "He stands among you," Yuna said quietly. "But he no longer claims us." Taemin stepped forward. His voice was steady, but Yuna could hear the fear beneath it. "I was young and foolish. I made a mistake. But I will not let that mistake destroy my future." The words hit Yuna harder than any physical blow. Around her, the 3 hatchlings pressed closer to her legs. Little Hana, the only daughter, began to cry softly. Her brothers, Jun and Wu-Jin, tried to comfort her while staying close to their mother. "Then the judgment is clear," Kyung-ho announced. "Yuna of the Crimson Scale, you are cast out. You and your young are banished from our lands. You will go to the Forbidden Wastes where no dragon may follow. There you will learn the cost of breaking our ancient laws." "The Wastes will kill them," Yuna said, her voice breaking for the first time. "My children are innocent. They have done nothing wrong." "They exist because of your crime," Elder Miran replied. "If you had waited, if you had followed the proper way, they would have been born into honor. Instead, they are born into shame." Yuna looked around the hall one last time. These dragons had been her family, her people, her entire world. Now they watched her with cold eyes as she was sentenced to death, for that is what this was. The Forbidden Wastes were a place where nothing grew, where no dragon had ever survived for long. "You have until sunset to leave our territory," Kyung-ho said. "If you are found here after that time, we will hunt you down. Go now and never return." Yuna gathered her children close to her. Jun, the eldest at barely 5 years old, tried to stand tall like his mother. Hana clung to her leg, still crying. Little Wu-Jin looked up at her with wide, confused eyes. "Where are we going, mother?" he asked in his small voice. "We are going to find a new home," Yuna told him, though her heart was breaking. "We are going to be strong, all of us together." As they walked from the Great Hall, Yuna felt the weight of every gaze upon them. Some dragons looked angry. Others seemed sad but did nothing to help. A few young dragons appeared confused, as if they did not understand why this was happening. Outside, the sky was growing dark. Yuna had only a few hours to gather what she could carry and leave the only home she had ever known. Her dwelling was small but comfortable, filled with memories of happier times. She packed food, warm coverings, and a few tools. Everything else would have to be left behind. The hatchlings helped as best they could. They did not fully understand what was happening, but they knew their world was changing. Neighbors who had once been friendly now avoided them. Children who had played with Jun and Hana were called inside by worried parents. As the sun began to set, Yuna led her children to the edge of Crimson Scale territory. Beyond lay the Forbidden Wastes, a land of black stone and bitter wind. No plants grew there. No water flowed. It was a place of death where dragons sent their criminals to die slowly. "Will we ever come back, Mother?" Jun asked as they walked into the darkness. Yuna looked back at the warm lights of the clan settlement. Somewhere in those lights, Taemin was probably eating dinner, safe and accepted. He had chosen his future over his family. She could not hate him for it, but the pain was almost unbearable. "I don't know," she told her son honestly. "But we will survive. We will find a way." The first night in the wastes was the hardest. The ground was cold and sharp beneath them. The wind carried no scent of life, only the smell of old stone and emptiness. The hatchlings huddled together for warmth while Yuna kept watch. She could hear things moving in the darkness, though she could not tell what they were. By morning, little Wu Jin was already looking weak. The others were hungry and tired. Yuna realized that the small amount of food she had brought would not last long. She needed to find water, shelter, and something to eat. But in this dead land, she did not know where to begin. For 3 days, they walked deeper into the wastes. Yuna found a small cave where they could hide from the worst of the wind. She discovered a tiny spring that provided barely enough water to keep them alive. But food was almost impossible to find. The hatchlings grew thinner each day. On the 4th day, Wu Jin could barely walk. His small body was failing without proper nutrition. Hana and June tried to share their meager portions with him, but it was not enough. Yuna felt despair creeping into her heart like poison. She had brought her children to this place to die slowly. The Dragon Council had known this would happen. They had sentenced not just her, but 3 innocent young ones who had never chosen to break any law. That night, as she held her sick youngest son, Yuna made a promise. If they were going to die in this cursed place, she would at least try to find help. Tomorrow, she would search for anything that might save her children's lives. She would not give up, not while breath remained in her body. Above them, the stars looked down without mercy on the small family of exiles, alone in the vast emptiness of the forbidden wastes. The strange metal object had fallen from the sky 3 days ago. Yuna had seen it streak across the darkness like a burning star before it crashed into the rocky valley below. The sound had been unlike anything she had ever heard, a roar that shook the very stones beneath her feet. Now she crouched behind a ridge of black rock, watching the creatures that had emerged from the metal shell. They were small and soft, with no scales or natural armor. Their skin was pale and smooth, and they walked on 2 legs like dragons in their smaller forms. But these beings were different. They moved with purpose and intelligence. "What are they, Mother?" whispered June, pressed close beside her. "I do not know," Yuna replied quietly, "but they may be dangerous. Stay hidden." Below them, 3 of the strange creatures worked around their damaged vessel. One of them, taller than the others, seemed to be their leader. He had dark hair and moved with careful precision as he examined the broken parts of their craft. His companions, a female with long black hair and another male with broader shoulders, followed his directions. Yuna had been watching them for 2 days now. She was desperate. Little Wu Jin was getting weaker, and she had found almost nothing to eat. The spring water helped, but it was not enough. Her children needed real food, and soon, or they would not survive another week. The strange beings had supplies. She had seen them eating and drinking things from containers made of materials she did not recognize. They had tools that worked without fire or muscle power. They had shelter that protected them from the bitter wind. But were they friendly or hostile? Yuna had no way of knowing. The tall one, who seemed to be called Ji-hoon by his companions, was examining something near their vessel. He held a small device that made soft beeping sounds. Every few moments he would look up at the surrounding rocks with keen interest. "Captain Kim," Ji-hoon called to the broader male. "These readings are strange. Something has been moving our equipment." The one called Kim Dong-wook turned from his work on the damaged engine. "What do you mean, moving it?" "Look at these marks in the dust," Ji-hoon said, pointing to the ground. "Something picked up our water containers, examined them carefully, then put them back. But it left no footprints that match any animal I know. The female, so young, joined them. Could it be some kind of local wildlife?" "Maybe," Ji-hoon said thoughtfully. "But look at how precisely everything was replaced. This suggests intelligence, high intelligence." From her hiding place, Yuna felt a chill of fear. They had discovered that she had been near their camp. During the first night, driven by desperation, she had crept close while they slept. She had wanted to steal food for her children, but something had stopped her. These beings seemed so small and fragile. Taking their supplies might mean their death, just as her exile meant the death of her own family. Instead, she had only looked at their strange tools and containers, trying to understand what they were. She had been careful to put everything back exactly as she found it. But apparently she had not been careful enough. "We should be ready for contact," Ji-hoon told his companions. "Whatever is out there, it is watching us. It might approach when it gets desperate enough." How right he was, Yuna thought bitterly. Every day her situation grew more desperate. Wu Jin could barely lift his head now. Hana and June were trying to be brave, but she could see the fear in their young eyes. They knew their little brother was dying. That evening, as the alien beings made their camp, Yuna made a difficult decision. She would approach them, not to steal but to try to communicate. Perhaps they would help. Perhaps they would kill her. Either way, she could not watch her children waste away without trying everything possible. She left the hatchlings hidden in their cave with strict orders to stay quiet and wait for her return. If she did not come back by morning, June was to take his siblings and try to find their way back toward Dragonlands, even if it meant capture. Moving carefully through the darkness, Yuna approached the alien camp. They had made a small fire using some kind of device that produced flames without wood. Around the fire, they sat talking in their strange language. Their voices were higher than dragon voices, more musical. Yuna shifted to her smaller form, the one dragons used when they needed to move quietly or fit into tight spaces. Even reduced, she was still larger than the aliens, but perhaps less threatening. She stepped into the light of their fire. All three aliens froze. So Young made a small sound of alarm. Dongwook reached for some kind of tool at his belt, but Jihoon held up his hand for calm. "Easy," he said softly, though Yuna did not understand his words. "Look at her posture. She is not attacking." Yuna stood very still, keeping her head low in what she hoped was a non-threatening gesture. She tried to make her voice gentle as she spoke. "Please," she said in the dragon tongue. "My children are dying. I need help." The aliens looked at each other with wide eyes. They clearly did not understand her words, but something in her tone seemed to reach them. Jihoon slowly stood up, moving with careful, deliberate motions. He held out his hands, palms up, showing that he carried no weapons. "I think she is asking for something," he said to his companions. "Look at her eyes. She is desperate." Yuna tried again, this time pointing toward the direction where her children waited. She made gestures, trying to show that she had young ones, that they were small, that they were in trouble. Jihoon watched her carefully, his engineer's mind working to understand the problem she was trying to communicate. After a few moments, he nodded slowly. "Children," he said, though Yuna did not know the word. He pointed in the direction she had indicated, then made a gesture with his hands to show something small. Yuna's heart leaped. He understood, at least partly. She nodded quickly, then tried to show that her young were sick, weak, hungry. She acted out eating, then shook her head sadly. So Young whispered something to Jihoon in their language. He nodded and walked slowly to their supplies. He picked up one of their food containers and offered it to Yuna. For a long moment they stared at each other across the fire. Two completely different species, unable to speak each other's languages but somehow beginning to understand. The container in Jihoon's hands might contain poison for all Yuna knew. These aliens might be planning to capture her. But Wu Jin was dying. Her other children were not far behind. She had to take the risk. Slowly, carefully, Yuna reached out and took the offered food. Jihoon smiled, and somehow, even across the vast differences between their species, Yuna understood that expression. It meant kindness. It meant hope. For the first time since her exile began, Yuna felt that her children might actually survive. The food that Jihoon had given Yuna was unlike anything she had ever tasted. It came in small, colorful packages and seemed to contain everything her body needed. More importantly, it was helping little Wu Jin grow stronger. After 3 days of eating the human food, he could sit up again and even play with his siblings. Jihoon had been working hard to understand Yuna's situation. He used numbers drawn in the dirt, simple pictures, and hand gestures to communicate. So Young had started making a list of dragon words, writing them down in her strange symbols whenever Yuna spoke. "She has been cast out from her people," So Young explained to the others during one of their evening discussions. "I think her children were born too early according to their laws." "That is barbaric," Dongwook said angrily. "Punishing children for when they were born." Jihoon nodded, his engineer's mind already working on the problem. "It gets worse. Look at these readings from my soil samples." He showed them data on his small device. The numbers meant nothing to Yuna, but she could see the concern on their faces. "The ground here has almost no minerals that dragons need to survive," Jihoon continued. "Their bodies require specific elements that simply do not exist in these wastes. That is why this place was chosen for exile. Dragons sent here are meant to die slowly." "How long do they have?" So Young asked quietly. "With our food helping, maybe a few months. Without it, her children would already be dead." That night, Yuna tried to explain more about her people to the humans. Using their growing shared language of gestures and simple words, she told them about the great dragon clans, the rigid laws, and the punishment for breaking tradition. There are others, she managed to say in broken human speech that So Young had been teaching her. Other dragons like me. Cast out alone, how many? Ji-hoon asked. Yuna held up her hands multiple times, trying to show a large number. Many, very many. All over wastes. All dying slow. Ji-hoon was quiet for a long time after that. Yuna could see him thinking, the way he always did when facing a difficult problem. Finally, he spoke to his companions. What if we could change this place? He said. What if we could make the wastes livable for dragons? That would require massive terraforming, Dongwook replied. We do not have that kind of equipment. We have some terraforming tools, Ji-hoon pointed out. And we have something else. We have knowledge that dragon society clearly lacks. Over the next several days, Ji-hoon worked with an energy that amazed Yuna. He took samples of everything around them. He studied the water from the small spring. He examined the rocks and dirt. He even asked Yuna to show him exactly what dragons needed to stay healthy. Using her growing human vocabulary, Yuna explained as best she could. Dragons needed certain minerals in their water. They needed specific temperature ranges. They needed particular types of stone that contained elements their bodies use to keep their scales strong and their fire hot. All of this can be provided artificially, Ji-hoon said excitedly. We can create the conditions dragons need even in this wasteland. But it would take years, So Young protested. And huge amounts of resources. Not if we are smart about it, Ji-hoon replied. Not if we start small and build gradually. He began sketching plans in the dirt, showing Yuna his ideas. First, they would improve the area around the spring. Add the right minerals to the water. Create thermal regulators to control temperature. Build proper shelter that could house multiple dragon families. Yuna watched in wonder as the human explained his vision. He was talking about creating a new dragon settlement, right here in the place where dragons were sent to die. It seemed impossible, but his confidence was infectious. We need to find the other exiles first, Ji-hoon said. If we are going to do this, we need help from dragons who understand what is truly needed. Finding the other outcasts was easier than expected. When word spread that humans were helping dragons in the wastes, the desperate began to appear. First came an elderly dragon named Chol-su, so old his scales had turned white. He had been cast out for questioning the wisdom of the Dragon Council. I never believed I would see kindness again, he told Yuna in their ancient language. These humans offer what our own people would not. Next came Mi-jin, a fierce female dragon who had refused an arranged mating. Her red and gold scales were still bright, but her eyes held deep anger at the injustice she had suffered. The clans cast me out because I would not breed with a dragon I despised, she explained. They said my desires meant nothing compared to clan politics. Young Ho-sung arrived last, barely older than Yuna herself. His scales were an unusual blue color that the traditional dragons considered unlucky. He had been exiled simply for being different. My parents tried to hide my color with dyes, he said sadly. But eventually the elders saw the truth. They said I would bring bad fortune to the clan. With each new arrival, Ji-hoon's excitement grew. Every dragon had different knowledge and skills. Chol-su understood ancient dragon history and the real reasons behind many clan laws. Mi-jin was strong and practical, able to do heavy work that the humans could not manage. Ho-sung had studied dragon medicine and knew exactly what nutrients young dragons needed to grow properly. This could actually work. So Young said one evening as they watched the growing group of exiles working together, we could really build something here. More than that, Ji-hoon replied. We could change everything. Show dragon society that their old ways are not the only ways. But even as hope grew among the outcasts, Yuna felt a shadow of worry. They were building something unprecedented in the forbidden wastes. Sooner or later, the dragon clans would notice. And when they did, they would not simply allow it to continue. The traditional dragons had exiled them to die. If they discovered that the exiles were not only surviving but thriving, there would be consequences. Still, as Yuna watched her children playing with other young dragons for the first time since their exile, she knew that whatever came next, they had given her family something precious. They had given them hope, and sometimes hope was enough to change the world. 3 months had passed since Ji-hoon first proposed his impossible plan. The small spring in the wastes had become the center of something extraordinary. Where once there had been only barren rock, now a growing settlement stretched across the valley floor. Ji-hoon worked from dawn until late into the night, his terraforming equipment humming constantly. He had modified the machines to process the dead soil and add the minerals dragons needed. Slowly, patch by patch, the ground was becoming fertile. "The atmospheric processors are working beyond my expectations," he told So Young as they reviewed the daily progress reports. "The air quality has improved by 30% in just the last week." Yuna had become Ji-hoon's closest partner in the project. Her quick mind grasped human technology faster than anyone had expected. She could now operate some of the simpler machines and had begun teaching other dragons how to help. "The water treatment system needs adjustment," she told him, using the human technical words she had learned. "Chulsu says the mineral content is still too low for the oldest dragons." Ji-hoon nodded, making notes on his tablet. Yuna's ability to bridge the gap between human engineering and dragon needs had been essential to their success. The settlement now housed nearly 40 exiled dragons. Each new arrival brought their own story of rejection and abandonment, but also their own skills and knowledge. Chulsu had become their historian and advisor. His centuries of experience helped them understand the complex politics of dragon society and predict how the clans might react to their growing community. "The Council of Elders meets once every season," he explained during one of their planning sessions. "They will have heard rumors by now. Exiled dragons do not simply disappear forever. Some of them have family members who still care about their fate." Mi-jin had taken charge of construction projects that required dragon strength. Under her leadership, teams of dragons carved dwelling spaces into the rocky walls and built thermal regulation systems that kept everyone comfortable. "These caves will house 50 dragons, comfortably," she reported to the group. "With the heating systems the human Ji-hoon designed, even the coldest nights will not trouble us." Ho-sung had established a medical center where he treated dragons suffering from malnutrition and the effects of living in the harsh wastes. His knowledge of dragon physiology combined with human medical supplies had saved several lives. "Little Wu Jin is completely healthy now," he told Yuna with satisfaction. "All the young ones are growing strong. They will be larger and healthier than dragons raised in traditional clans." But the greatest surprise had come from the young dragons themselves. Free from the rigid expectations of clan society, they were developing in ways that amazed the adults. June, Yuna's eldest, showed remarkable talent for understanding human technology. He could repair basic equipment and had begun learning to read human writing. He asked questions that even I struggled to answer, Ji-hoon admitted to Yuna. "His mind works differently from adult dragons. He sees possibilities where you see limitations." Hana had become fascinated with the terraforming process itself. She spent hours watching the machines work, and had begun suggesting improvements based on her observations of how dragons interacted with their environment. Even little Wu Jin, now healthy and energetic, displayed abilities that would have been discouraged in traditional dragon society. His unusual empathy allowed him to sense the emotional needs of other dragons and help resolve conflicts before they became serious. As the settlement grew, word began to spread beyond the wastes. Dragons in the traditional clans whispered about the impossible place where exiles not only survived, but prospered. "My cousin sent a message," Mi-jin reported one day. "She says young dragons in her clan are asking questions about why dragons must wait so long to mate, why certain colors are considered unlucky, why the old ways cannot be changed." This news both excited and worried the settlement leaders. Change was happening, but change often led to conflict. "We need to be ready for visitors," Ji-hoon said during their weekly planning meeting. "Some will come out of curiosity. Others may come with hostile intentions." Dong-wook had been working on defensive systems, adapting human technology for dragon capabilities. "We cannot match the military power of the great clans," he admitted. "But we can make attacking us very costly." So Young had established communication networks that would give them early warning of approaching dragons. Her monitoring systems could detect flying dragons from great distances and identify whether they came in peace or war. But their best defense was the settlement itself. Every dragon who visited could see with their own eyes that the exiles were not merely surviving, but thriving. The young dragons were healthy and happy. The adults were productive and fulfilled. The community worked together in ways that the rigid clan system made impossible. We are proving that dragon society can be different, Chulsu observed. That tradition is not always wisdom, that old laws are not always just. One evening, as Ji-hoon and Yuna stood watching the sunset over their growing community, she tried to express what his help had meant to her. Before you came, I thought my children would die in this place, she said slowly, still struggling with human words. I thought I had destroyed their lives by loving too early. You gave them something more valuable than a comfortable life in the clans, Ji-hoon replied. You gave them freedom to become whoever they are meant to be. And you gave us the tools to build that freedom into something real, Yuna said. My people will remember what you did here. But even as they celebrated their success, both knew that their greatest challenges lay ahead. The traditional dragon clans would not ignore them forever. Sooner or later, there would be a confrontation. When that day came, they would learn whether their small community of outcasts and humans could stand against the power of centuries-old tradition. Yet as they looked out over the thriving settlement, with dragon children playing games that would have been forbidden in clan society, and adults working together regardless of their scale, color, or age, they felt ready for whatever came. They had built something worth fighting for, something worth defending. They had built hope. The war party appeared on the horizon at dawn, their massive forms dark against the brightening sky. 50 of the greatest dragon warriors from the combined clans flew in perfect formation, their scales glinting like armor in the early light. Elder Patriarch Kyung-ho led them, his ancient black scales scarred from countless battles. Behind him flew the champions of every major clan, including Tai-min, whose golden scales seemed pale compared to his grim expression. In the settlement below, warning bells sounded as So-young's detection systems identified the approaching force. They are not coming for negotiation, Chulsu observed grimly as he watched the war party circle overhead. That is a punishment force meant to destroy completely. Ji-hoon stood with Yuna and the other settlement leaders on the main platform they had built. Around them 40 exiled dragons and 3 humans prepared to face the might of traditional dragon society. We cannot fight them directly, Mijin said, her warriors' instincts assessing their situation. They outnumber us and have centuries of combat experience. We do not need to fight them the old way, Ji-hoon replied calmly. We have advantages they do not expect. Over the past months, Ji-hoon had not been building just a settlement. He had been creating a defensive system that used human technology enhanced by dragon capabilities. Hidden throughout the valley were devices that could level the playing field against a superior force. Kyung-ho landed on the valley floor with thunderous impact, his massive form dwarfing everything around him. His voice boomed across the settlement as he spoke. Outcasts and criminals, he declared, you have violated the sacred laws by refusing to accept your punishment. This abomination you have built is an insult to dragon tradition. Yuna stepped forward to face him, no longer the frightened young dragon who had been cast out. Months of responsibility and success had given her confidence she had never possessed before. We have harmed no one, she replied, her voice carrying clearly across the valley. We have simply chosen to live instead of die. You were sentenced to death for good reason, Kyung-ho responded. Your crimes against tradition demanded that price. By continuing to exist, you mock the justice of your betters. Behind the elder, other clan dragons began to spread out, surrounding the settlement, but they hesitated as they saw what the exiles had built. Where they had expected to find desperate outcasts barely surviving, they found a thriving community with technology they did not understand. Tai-min landed near Kyung-ho, his eyes searching the crowd until they found Yuna. For a moment, their gazes met across the distance that separated them. In his face, she saw not the hatred she expected, but confusion, and something that might have been regret. The female Yuna will surrender herself and her unlawful offspring, Kyung-ho commanded. The rest of you will submit to judgment for the crime of harboring criminals. No, Ji-hoon said, stepping beside Yuna. His human voice seemed small compared to the dragon's roar, but his words carried absolute conviction. These dragons are under human protection. They have committed no crimes except refusing to die quietly. Kyung-ho turned his great head toward Ji-hoon, his eyes burning with contempt. You are not of our people, small creature. You have no right to interfere in dragon justice. I have the right of someone who sees injustice and chooses to act. Ji-hoon replied. These dragons have built something beautiful here. They have proven that your old ways are not the only ways. The standoff stretched taut between them. Around the valley, dragons on both sides prepared for battle. But then something unexpected happened. A young dragon from Kyung-ho's own force landed and approached the elder. His scales were traditional brown and gold, marking him as a member of good standing in clan society. Elder Patriarch, the young dragon said hesitantly, I request permission to examine this settlement more closely. Kyung-ho's eyes narrowed dangerously. You will remain with the war party, Sung-min. But other young dragons were also landing, their curiosity overcoming their training. They moved through the settlement, staring in wonder at the technology, the comfortable dwellings, the healthy appearance of dragons who should have been dead. This is impossible, one of them whispered. How can exiles live better than clan members? Ho-sung, the blue-scaled dragon who had been cast out for his unusual coloring, approached a group of young warriors. Among them was his own brother, who had never spoken against his exile. Jae-sung, Ho-sung said quietly. You came to destroy me. His brother stared at him in shock. Ho-sung was healthy, confident, surrounded by friends who valued him for his medical knowledge rather than fearing him for his strange scales. I thought you would be dead, Jae-sung whispered. They said the wastes would kill you within days. I nearly did die, Ho-sung admitted. But I found something here that our clan never gave me. I found acceptance. Across the settlement, similar scenes were playing out as exiled dragons reunited with family members who had come to witness their destruction. The reality of what they had built was harder to deny when seen with their own eyes. Kyung-ho realized that his careful formation was breaking apart as his own warriors began to question their mission. His voice rose in fury. Enough! You have been deceived by human trickery and criminal lies. We will burn this place to ash and scatter these outcasts to the winds, he reared back, preparing to breathe fire that would destroy everything the settlement had built. But as he opened his massive jaws, Ji-hoon activated the defensive systems he had spent months preparing. Energy barriers sprang up around the settlement, deflecting the elder's fire back into the sky. Gravity modifiers made it difficult for the attacking dragons to maintain flight. Sound dampeners reduced their ability to coordinate attacks. Your technology cannot protect you forever, human, Kyung-ho snarled. We will tear this place apart stone by stone. You could try, Ji-hoon agreed calmly. But ask yourself this. Why are your own warriors hesitating to attack? What do they see here that troubles them? Indeed, many of the clan dragons had stopped advancing. They looked around at young dragons playing freely, at elders working alongside youngsters regardless of age restrictions, at dragons of different colors living together in harmony. It was everything their society claimed to value, but achieved through methods their society forbade. The battle everyone expected was turning into something else entirely. Not a war between old and new, but a moment of recognition that change was not only possible but necessary. The real fight was just beginning. The moment of truth came when Taiman broke ranks and landed directly in front of Yuna. The golden-scaled dragon who had once abandoned her now stared at the thriving family he had rejected. June, Hana and Woojin stood protectively near their mother. They were no longer the starving hatchlings he remembered. They were strong, healthy young dragons with bright eyes and confident postures. More importantly, they looked at him without recognition or need. They do not remember me, Taiman said quietly, his voice full of pain. They were very young when you chose your reputation over your family, Yuna replied without anger. Children adapt. They found other dragons to love them. Around them, the confrontation between old and new dragon society continued to unfold in unexpected ways. Instead of the battle Kyung-ho had planned, his warriors found themselves in conversations with dragons they had come to destroy. Sung-min, the young warrior who had first broken formation, was talking intently with Chulsu about the real reasons behind clan laws. You mean the age restrictions for mating were created to prevent overpopulation during the food shortages 3,000 years ago? Exactly, Chulsu confirmed. But the shortage ended long ago. The law remained because it gave the elders control over young dragons. Most of our traditions began as practical solutions to forgotten problems. Mijin had cornered several female warriors, explaining how the settlement made decisions. Every dragon has a voice here, regardless of age or gender or scale color. We choose our mates based on love, not political advantage. We raise our children together, sharing knowledge and responsibility. But how do you maintain order without the old laws? Asked one of the females, her scales marked with the purple of the noble clans. We found better laws, Mijin replied. Laws based on fairness rather than fear. Elder Kyung-ho watched his carefully planned punishment expedition dissolving into chaos. His own dragons were beginning to question everything they had been taught. Worse, they were seeing with their own eyes that the outcasts had created something better than what they had left behind. This is heresy, he roared, his voice echoing off the valley walls. These criminals have poisoned your minds with human lies. But Ji-hoon stepped forward, his calm voice cutting through the elder's rage. The only thing we have given them is the freedom to prove what they were already capable of. Everything you see here was built by dragon hands and dragon minds. Impossible, Kyung-ho snarled. Dragons need structure, hierarchy, tradition. Without the old ways, we become chaos. Do we look like chaos to you? Yuna asked, gesturing toward the settlement around them. Dragons of all ages worked together on various projects. Children played games that mixed human and dragon elements. Elders shared knowledge with youngsters who listened eagerly. It was the opposite of chaos. It was harmony. Ho-sung approached his brother Jae-sung, who still stared at him in amazement. I want you to meet someone, he said, leading him toward the medical center. There. A small dragon child with unusual silver scales was recovering from injuries suffered during her journey to the settlement. Her name is Yoon-ji, Ho-sung explained. She was cast out from the northern clans for the same reason I was. Unusual coloring. In our old society, she would have died alone in the wilderness. Here she will grow up knowing that different is not wrong. Jae-sung looked at the young dragon, then at his brother's confident, happy expression. I voted to exile you, he whispered. I was afraid that defending you would bring shame on our family. I know, Ho-sung replied gently, and I forgive you. Fear makes people do terrible things, but look around. This is what happens when we choose love over fear. Across the settlement, Taemin was having his own moment of reckoning. Little Woo Jin had approached him with the fearless curiosity of a child who had never learned to fear other dragons. Are you sad? Woo Jin asked, noticing the tears in the golden dragon's eyes. Yes, little one, I am very sad. Why are you sad? Taemin looked at this child who should have been his son. Because I made a mistake that I can never fix. I chose the wrong thing when I should have chosen love. Woo Jin considered this seriously. My mother says mistakes are how we learn. Maybe you can learn from this mistake and not make it again. The simple wisdom of a child hit Taemin harder than any condemnation could have. He looked at Yuna, who was watching their interaction with careful attention. I do not deserve forgiveness, he told her, but I want you to know that I have regretted my choice every day since I made it. I know, Yuna replied. But we do not need your regret now. We have built something new without you. Her words were not cruel, but they were final. Taemin had made his choice, and she had moved beyond it. Elder Kyung-ho realized that his authority was crumbling around him. More than half his warriors were now actively questioning the mission. Some were asking to stay and learn more about the settlement. Others were planning to return to their clans with disturbing questions about the justice of their society. You will all be exiled for this treason, he threatened desperately. I will see every one of you cast out for consorting with criminals. But Sung Min, the young warrior who had started the rebellion, stepped forward with new confidence. Then we will come here, where dragons are judged by their actions rather than their obedience to outdated laws. Other dragons nodded agreement. The threat of exile had lost its power when they could see that exile might actually be freedom. Kyung-ho found himself in an impossible position. He could not destroy the settlement without destroying his own warriors. He could not maintain authority without the respect of those he led. And he could not deny what his eyes showed him. The outcast had created something better than what they had been cast out from. This is not over, he warned, but his voice lacked its former conviction. You are right, Ji-hoon agreed. This is just the beginning. Change is coming to Dragon Society whether you accept it or not. The only question is whether you will be part of building something better, or whether you will be left behind by history. As the sun reached its peak, the confrontation that should have ended in destruction became instead a celebration of possibility. Dragons from both groups shared meals, exchanged stories, and began to imagine what their world could become. Yuna stood with her children, watching as two dragon societies began to merge into something new. June was excitedly explaining human technology to fascinated clan warriors. Hana was showing other young dragons the games they had invented in the settlement. Woojin was making friends with children who had never seen dragons with parents who loved them regardless of traditions. "You did this," Jihoon said, joining her on the observation platform. "You refused to let injustice have the final word." "We did this together," Yuna corrected. "Dragons and humans, outcasts and clan members, everyone who chose hope over fear." Below them, the settlement buzzed with new activity as dragons who had come as enemies began to imagine staying as friends. The rigid hierarchy of the clans was giving way to the fluid cooperation of the settlement. It would not be easy. Change never was. There would be resistance, setbacks, and challenges they could not yet imagine. But looking at dragon children of all colors playing together, while their parents planned a better future, Yuna knew that they had already won the most important victory. They had proven that another way was possible. As the day ended and both groups settled in for the night, no longer enemies but not yet fully friends, the stars looked down on a world in the process of transformation. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities. But tonight, for the first time in dragon history, exile was no longer a sentence of death. It was a doorway to freedom.